Taiwan unveils its newest military fighting vehicle, a milestone for the local defense industry. Taiwan is being recognized for its achievements in combating human trafficking, but there are still issues with protecting the many vulnerable migrant workers. Pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong's largest national security trial plea for lenience. Plus, conservationists in Taiwan are coming up with a new plan to clear out an invasive bird species. Hello and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Taiwan's newest infantry fighting vehicle is being showcased for the first time. While its new weapon systems are drawing much of the attention, the vehicle is also being hailed a success for Taiwan's domestic defense industry. Jaime Okan reports.
Firepower on the go. This is the idea behind Taiwan's newest indigenous armored vehicle. This vehicle is designed to operate in rugged terrain and in a potential combat zone. For the past 5 years, it has undergone countless tests and is now awaiting a final inspection from the Army before it can enter mass production. Engineers from the country's largest weapons maker say they are optimistic.
枪炮合一、动态稳定以及行进间射击的能力，绝对能够符合未来国军在作战方面的需求。
One of the key features of this vehicle is a brand new 105mm cannon, which the military says can help provide extra firepower to its infantry. Taiwan has been looking for ways to defend against a possible invasion from China, and analysts say this gun is a good option.
With a new gun is a 105mm new gun is the quite formidable weapon that can pose a serious threat. So in some cases, it might even stand a chance against landing main battles.
The military says it will also make another prototype that's under 3 meters, as this one is just a bit too tall, standing roughly at 3.3 meters high. While much of the attention is focused on the cannon, the new weapon system on top of this armored vehicle, it's what's inside that's really making manufacturers happy and optimistic about the future of Taiwan's domestic defense industry, as 85% of this vehicle is made in Taiwan. In recent years, Taiwan has invested billions into its domestic defense industry as it tries to ease its reliance on defense products from the United States. And it's believed this armored vehicle demonstrates Taiwan's potential to develop even more advanced systems.
I think this is a great example of where we see Taiwan's innovation really coming to the foreground. There's an incredible wealth of innovation in Taiwan, just a wonderful bed of R&D and talent that's being poured into the defense industrial sector. It's not just things like the Clouded Leopard, but UAVs, and indigenous missiles are another area where Taiwan's domestic defense industry really excels.
As Taiwan continues to innovate and create new weapons here at home, it's becoming more determined than ever to show that its defense is truly in its own hands. Ryan Wu and Jaime Okan in Nantou County for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has expelled 4 Chinese Coast Guard vessels from its territorial waters. The vessels were spotted around 5 a.m. on Tuesday near Taiwan's outlying island of Kinmen. The Coast Guard deployed 3 patrol boats to collect evidence and drive the vessels away. It says it was a deliberate incursion by China and disruptive to peace in the Taiwan Strait. It's the latest of several Chinese maritime incursions since May. The U.S. State Department has ranked Taiwan as a Tier 1 country in an annual report measuring efforts to combat human trafficking. It's the 15th consecutive year Taiwan has achieved the highest possible ranking, though it doesn't mean it's completely free from the issue. Reporter Reese Ayers spoke to Yiling Cho from Amnesty International about who in Taiwan is still vulnerable to human trafficking.
A recent US State Department report shows that Taiwan is a Tier 1 ranked country in terms of tackling human trafficking, which indicates that Taiwan's doing a good job in dealing with the issue. But does this ranking accurately reflect the situation in Taiwan?
According to the report, actually, the Tier 1 is just the country which fit the minimum standard of the prevention of the human trafficking issues. Shows that Taiwan's authorities did a lot on that, but there are still a lot of space to be improved, including in the migrant workers' labor working situation in Taiwan.
And so what kinds of people are most vulnerable to human trafficking in Taiwan?
The migrant workers, especially the domestic care workers in the family, and also the distant ocean fishery workers, and even some foreign students are also the potential victims of the human trafficking. And I will say that there are also more undocumented migrants in Taiwan. They didn't protect by any legal framework or law in Taiwan.
Currently, what efforts are being made by the Taiwanese government or human rights organizations to counter human trafficking, and what more can be done?
The human trafficking case might be considered as a labor dispute rather than a human trafficking issues. And also, I think the review process or the identification process is lack of the civil society's opinions and consultation, and also we still see a lot of like the broker fee, the agency issues. So we need to improve all this working situation and working condition for all of them, and also to protect all of the undocumented migrants, the migrant workers who flee away from the employees and they become illegal migrants. Then they were facing, like, even they are sexual abuse or labor abuse, but they find it difficult to report to the police because they was under illegal status. And maybe we also need more training or resources for the police, prosecutors, and judges.
That was Reese Ayers speaking to Yiling Cho, National Director of Amnesty International, Taiwan. The Coast Guard has seized a drug smuggling boat from waters off southern Taiwan. Footage released shows officers pursuing the boat as it tried to escape. It was transporting nearly $30 million worth of ketamine packed into tea bags. 6 people have been arrested. The Coast Guard worked with anti-drug units from the United States, Malaysia, and other countries. Ketamine is a medical anesthetic, but popular as a party drug in Taiwan. The unemployment rate in May was the lowest in almost a quarter century. Jobless rates in Taiwan have fallen for 3 straight months to hit 3.34% this May. That's about 400,000 people without jobs, a drop of 0.76% compared to April. Jobless rates are highest among people with university degrees, a figure that could slightly rise this month as new graduates enter the labor market. The Chinese lunar module Chang'e 6 has returned to Earth, bringing back the first ever samples from the far side of the moon. The uncrewed spacecraft was retrieved in northern China on Tuesday, a successful end to the end mission that began in early May. The samples it brought back consist of lunar soil from a previously unvisited area on the moon's south pole. The milestone mission is part of China's efforts to advance its space program as it seeks to compete with other major powers in this area. 5 pro-democracy activists from the landmark Hong Kong 47 case have appeared in court trying for lighter sentences. The day's hearing is expected to be the final stage of the largest national security trial under China-imposed laws in the city. Joyce Zeng has more.
Deciding the fate of pro-democracy activists, Hong Kong's courts are hearing requests for leniency from 5 defendants in the city's biggest national security trial under Beijing-imposed laws, which could see some of them jailed for life. Among the 5 is legal scholar Benny Tai, who prosecutors have dubbed the mastermind behind an unofficial poll to select candidates for a legislative election 4 years ago. Seeing this as an attempt to overthrow the government, authorities arrested Tai and 46 other Democrats in 2021, collectively known as the Hong Kong 47. All but 2 of them were eventually convicted.
We have demonstrated to the world and also to the authority that we have not given up to strive for democracy for Hong Kong.
The case has drawn international criticism for Beijing's sweeping controls of Hong Kong as damaging democratic freedom. Chinese and Hong Kong authorities maintain that the national security laws were needed to bring back stability after months of pro-democracy protests in 2019, sparked by a bill that would have allowed sending criminal suspects to be tried in China.
The chief executive, John Lee, said that political reform or universal suffrage is out of his agenda in his term of office. Both Beijing and Hong Kong set the tone that any kind of progression back to the days that we used to be would no longer a thing.
45 of the activists are set to make their cases in the coming 6 weeks, including seasoned politicians, academics, doctors, and journalists. Some, including Benny Tai, have pleaded guilty, while others have become witnesses for the prosecution, moves that could lead to reduced sentences. But whether that will be honored is uncertain, as Hong Kong scholars say the city's legal system, with judges handpicked by Beijing, may not be following precedent. Scott Huang and Joyce Tsen for TaiwanPlus.
A plane carrying Julian Assange has reportedly arrived in Thailand. The WikiLeaks founder is on his way to a final court hearing in the U.S. territorial of Saipan, where he'll complete a plea deal with the U.S. Justice Department. Tiffany Wong reports on Assange's long battle against felony espionage charges and detention in the U.S.
Ending a decade-long legal battle, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is en route to a U.S. court in the Northern Mariana Islands, where he is expected to plead guilty to a single criminal charge under the U.S. Espionage Act. He reached a plea deal with the U.S. Justice Department after being held for 5 years in prison in the UK. Assange originally faced 18 charges of espionage for releasing hundreds of thousands of confidential documents related to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Under the deal, Assange's detention in the UK will equal a 62-month sentence served, leaving him free to return home to Australia.
Regardless of the views that people have about Mr. Assange's activities, the case has dragged on for too long. There's nothing to be gained by his continued incarceration, and we want him brought home to Australia.
Assange's legal battle sparked worldwide attention. He maintains the leaks were meant to hold governments accountable for their actions and raise awareness of human rights abuses. He found support among journalists and rights groups who said the U.S. court case threatened press freedom.
The cost to Julian, of course, has been to be deprived of freedom for all these years. In the battle for journalistic freedom, freedom to publish, foundation of democracy.
In a statement, the Committee to Protect Journalists says that the plea deal set a harmful legal precedent by opening the way for journalists to be tried under the Espionage Act if they receive classified material from whistleblowers. Chelsea Manning, the U.S. Army intelligence analyst who supplied the documents to Assange and WikiLeaks, was sentenced to 35 years in prison in 2013. To avoid a similar fate, Assange went on a self-imposed exile, seeking asylum at the Ecuadorian embassy in London before being detained by the British government. Now, after over a decade in legal limbo, Assange is a step closer to freedom. Once he's faced this U.S. court in the Northern Mariana Islands, he'll get to go home and reunite with his wife and 2 children, determined, his family says, to continue his fight for truth and justice. Dolphine Chen and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Stay tuned to TaiwanPlus News. Coming up after the break, Taiwan's dwindling birth rate is making it hard to fill the military's ranks.
At Connected, we believe in the power of dialogue. It's not just about the headlines, it's about finding common ground. Join the conversation.
Connected with Divya Gopalan on TaiwanPlus.
I'm Ed Moon in Taiwan's Kinmen Islands, and you're watching TaiwanPlus News. the voice of freedom in Asia.
人生的话，你发现说，我们大部分都是爱美的。
我自己少遇见一朵花，我可能就不是这个样子。
开始思考什么叫做一个本土性。
大声的唱出来说我是台湾人。
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A plummeting birth rate is having a serious knock-on effect on the country's conscription numbers. To help ease the problem, the government is making it harder to get out of mandatory military service. For low-income families, though, that could be a big problem. John Van Triest explains.
It's been 7 months since Taiwan lengthened conscription for young men from just 4 months to a full year. Officials say this is necessary as China ramps up its threat to invade. But filling the ranks is getting harder as Taiwan's birth rate drops. For the first time, Taiwan has conscripted less than 100,000 recruits. Projections show that this number will go down to just 75,000 at the start of the next decade. To fill the ranks, the government has had to relax rules on height and BMI, and it's also making it harder for those deemed fit to get exemptions from serving the full year. But some people worry this could deal a serious financial blow to families that rely on their young men for income. It is still possible to get classified as a supplemental soldier, conscripts who do 12 days training before returning to civilian life. But there are plans to scrap exemptions for young men that need to earn for their families. The only exception will be men who are the only support for a severely ill family member. Regular conscripts are paid, but not very much.
国防兵力结构调整，第二个就是追求兵役公平，94年次的这个薪资也做调整，接近基本工资。
But the Taiwan Alliance for Advancement of Youth Rights and Welfare says that until basic training is over, pay is less than half minimum wage. That can mean 2 months of minimal income.
做补充兵之后，他就可以赶快去再进行工作。这对于中低收入户家庭的青少年来说，它都是一个经济上面的一大打击。
Youth welfare activists want the government to look into subsidies or other measures to support these young people, so they can support the families who depend on them. Chris Ma and John Van Triest for TaiwanPlus.
HIV and AIDS cases are going down in Taiwan. A Centers for Disease Control report shows a year-on-year decrease in the number of new cases. There were 941 new HIV cases last year, continuing a downward trend since 2017. It's the lowest number in 2 decades. Health officials say better access to testing, treatment, and preventative medication have brought the disease under control.
包括自我筛检或是确诊就要马上治疗，这些对于我们整个 HIV 或是艾滋病的一个防治呢，都产生一个很大的一个功能，能够确实来服药，这样子呢就能够也有效的减少一些艾滋病毒的一个量，那这样就可以减少传播给其他的一个人。
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has condemned North Korea's new military pact with Russia. Speaking on the 74th anniversary of the start of the Korean War, Yoon called the alliance anachronistic. Last week, Moscow and Pyongyang agreed to offer military support for each other in case of an attack. Yoon also criticized the North for sending trash-filled balloons across the border. He said South Korea will be ready to respond to the North and stand its ground.
우리 군은 어떠한 경우라도 북한이 대한민국을 감히 넘보지 못하도록 확고한 대비 태세를 유지하고 북한의 도발에 압도적으로 단호하게 대응할 것입니다.
Rescue workers in South Korea are sifting through the ruins of a lithium battery factory, searching for any more victims after a fire ripped through the building on Monday night, killing at least 23 people. It's one of the country's deadliest factory fires in recent years. Wesley Lewis reports.
A living nightmare.
as this lithium battery factory outside Seoul goes up in flames, killing at least 23 people, 18 of them migrant workers from China. Firefighters say the blaze in Hwasong City, just outside the South Korean capital, started after an explosion at a warehouse owned by battery maker Aerosol. Eyewitnesses say the fire sounded like gunshots.
총알 막 날아오는 소리요. 그런 소리가 났죠. 막 따닥따닥따닥 하면서.
어디 전쟁 나갖고 막 총 쏘고 막 포탄 떨어지고 그런 줄 알았어요. 얼마나 막 소리가 큰지.
It took around 6 hours, more than 160 firefighters, and 60 fire engines to put out the blaze. Firefighters say the victims likely succumbed to noxious fumes within seconds of the fire engulfing the building.
짧은 시간에 유독성 연기를 흡입하시고 그게 한두 군만 마셔도 금방 질식되고 의식을 잃거든요. 그러면서 이제 불이 커지면서 피해를 보셨는 걸로 지금 추정을 하고 있습니다.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol visited the site of the deadly factory fire and says he is monitoring the situation, while the country's interior minister has vowed to support those who survived.
경기도와 화성시에서는 피해자별로 1:1 전담 공무원을 배치해서 지원에 최선을 다하고 부상자들이 치료를 받는데 불편함이 없도록 신속한 조치를 당부드립니다.
Officials and victims' family members have started organizing a memorial service in Hwasong for those who died in the fire. And on Tuesday morning, women believed to be victims' family members arrived at the factory, while firefighters and forensic services conducted a joint investigation to pinpoint the exact location and cause of the fire. This is not the only time an industrial fire has taken lives in South Korea. Back in 2020, another deadly blaze hit a construction site east of Seoul, leaving 38 people dead. But as the country reels from this disaster, both local and national officials say they're working to prevent any hazardous chemicals from contaminating the surrounding area and providing support to the victims and their loved ones. Kama Shu and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is making a final push to remove an invasive bird species from the country. With less than 100 of them left in the wild, researchers and officials have come up with a new plan to outsmart those that remain. Sandy Chi explains.
Armed with shotguns and air rifles, these people are on the riverbanks and mangroves near Taipei, hunting an invasive bird species, the African sacred ibis. These birds are not native to Taiwan, but they started breeding in the wild after 6 of them escaped from a zoo here in 1979. With no natural predators, they reproduced quickly, and the birds spread along the coast and in low-lying mountainous regions.
我们会担心说，埃及圣玄如果它的族群继续扩大的话，那可能就会威胁到我们台湾鸟类的这些大白鹭、小白鹭它的栖息环境。
Since 2014, the government has tried different ways to control the invasive ibis population, like removing eggs and fledglings from nests and setting traps for adult birds. It's been a taxing task, one that couldn't keep up with the birds' reproduction rates. It wasn't until 2020 that they started seeing substantial progress, when they started working with indigenous hunters using guns. It was an approach that some animal rights groups criticized at the time. But conservationists say protecting domestic birds is now generally accepted. And this new approach has led to the removal of more than 18,000 ibises. And officials aim to keep going until the invasive population is completely eradicated. Researchers say that working with hunters is the key to achieving this goal.
结合一些原民部落的这样的一个技能，猎人的技能，然后在保育的议题上面去执行这样的工作，在台湾至少是第一次。这样的一个机制，在配合是短期间内就有这么巨大的改变，它其实是一个我们觉得在全世界在谈外来种移除的工作上面，它是一个很特殊的样态。
Officials believe there are now fewer than 100 African sacred ibises left in the wild. With such a small population, the already difficult task has become even more challenging. The team is trying something new, by planting fake ibises that play recordings of their calls. It's an approach that attracts real ibises because the birds forage in flocks.
因为活下来的这些都是幸存者，他通常都会有学习的能力，这个东西就是需要跟这些动物去斗智啊。
Now, ibis habitats across Taiwan are closely monitored. Besides hunters patrolling along the rivers in northern Taiwan almost every day, volunteers and a real-time reporting network organized by birders are on the lookout.
今天这次来的时候，我就觉得应该是成效的关系啦，因为数量变越来越少了，那就代表就不会再出现了。
While the ibis has almost been eradicated, there are still lots of other invasive species in Taiwan. The common myna, giant snakehead, and many others pose threats to Taiwan's native animals and environment. And they're here only because of humans.
保育议题其实就是要去控制人所造成的问题，人不太可能消失的情况下，保育这议题就会一直永远存在。有意识到这件事情，他必须要去出来去处理这些事情。你就是需要去面对这些问题，对，因为如果你知道这个问题，然后解决不了，然后不去做，那基本上它就是越走越坏。
These conservationists are rushing to stop the spread of these invasive species before they spiral out of control. Luffy Li, Eason Chan, PG Zhuang, and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
And we'd like to thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can always visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we take you to a beach in Sicily where people are braving scorching temperatures at the seaside. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.